Hey everyone, my name's Kate. I'm here at the Eastside Freedom Library in St. Paul, Minnesota. And the first book that I have to read for you today is by someone you might have heard of named LeBron James. Now, I only know that he plays basketball. That's all I know about him, but you might know something else about him. And it's called I Promise. I promise to work hard and do what's right and be a leader in this game of life. I promise to go to school and read as much as I can, to follow the rules and respect the game plan. I promise to run full court and show up every time, to get right back up and let my magic shine. I promise to be open and try new things and enjoy the happy that change can bring. I promise to wear a big smile and use kindness when I speak, to remain strong yet humble with every win and defeat. I promise to ask for help whenever I need it, to reach for my star even when I can't see it. I promise to ask questions and find answers, and to believe in next time and second chances. I promise to use my voice and stand up for what's right, and when things get tough, to keep up the fight. I promise to stand tall, rise up, and give all that I've got, to throw the alley-oop and uplift others on the spot. I promise to respect my elders and peers the same, to leave new places better than I came. I promise to stay true, keep my head up, and never give up no matter what. I promise to dream big and love bigger, to be a team player and a winner. I promise to cross bridges and break down walls, to rise with the sun and learn from the falls. I promise to be courageous, to be free, to strive for greatness. I promise to be me. Let's see. There's a picture of LeBron. You maybe have seen him before. I know that my kids know a lot more about him than I do. Maybe you do too. Okay, the next book is from an author that we've read before, Kalia, who I believe, let's double check, lives in Minnesota. The first time we saw the swing and the slide and the garden of the greenhouse with the big windows, my mother sat down in a chair in the backyard and said she did not want to get up. Ty and I looked at the garden and she pointed out tomatoes, green beans, and a watermelon as round as my mother's belly. Ty knelt down to touch the dirt. I asked my mother if I could try the swing, and she said, "Yes, Pajtab." The greenhouse became our house. I helped Ty hang the special story cloth about how the Hmong got to America on the empty wall by the big window of the living room. We saw an old man and woman through the window, and they waved and we waved back. Later, my mother and father brought me across the street. The old man's name was Bob, and the old woman's name was Ruth. Up close, I could see they were even older than Ty. Ty and I were in the garden picking tomatoes and beans and checking on the watermelon when my parents brought my baby brothers home from the hospital. I ran to the gate. The boys were smaller than my baby dolls, but cuter than any doll, with their fuzzy heads and red lips and round brown eyes. Some days the babies cried very loud. I covered my ears with my hands and asked my father to take me outside. Bob and Ruth sat on their special bench and we waved back and forth. The leaves of the 2 ginkgo trees by Bob and Ruth's house turned yellow like apricots. One day, a brisk wind blew and the fan-shaped leaves came flying down. They covered the grass and the street and the dark mouth of the drain. Bob raked while Ruth sat and watched. I brought a leaf in for the babies to touch, but my mother said, "They're still too little, Pajtab." The snow made the world quiet around us. We stopped seeing Bob and Ruth outside. The snowflakes fell on their driveway and glittered in the gray light. I made a ball of snow for my brothers, but it melted before they woke up from their nap. At night, I looked out our big window at Bob and Ruth's house to see their lights shining across the dark street. Sometimes I waved at the shape of a person looking back at me. That shadow person, never waved back. One cold morning, cars came to our block, filling the street. Car doors slammed as men and women in thick jackets walked quickly to Bob and Ruth's house. My father said, "Ruth has died and her family is coming to say goodbye." I felt sad for Ruth. My brothers just played with the toys above them. The cars kept coming, and the next day and the next, I swayed back and forth on my toes by the big window. I tried to lift one of my brothers so that people could see how cute he was, but he cried and my mother said, "You're still too little to carry him, Pajtob." After the Hmong New Year, my baby brothers learned how to sit on their own, and we all sat looking out the window together. I clapped for them when a plane flew high across the sky. They laughed every time. The house across the street looked empty. The ginkgo trees reached for the sky with their thin fingers. When the snow started melting, I could not wait to return to the swing and the slide in the garden. My baby brothers crawled all over the floor, underneath the table and the chairs. They were like puppies, with their tongues licking everything. I found the first worm of spring on the sidewalk and named her Annette. I wanted to bring her inside so my brothers could watch her wiggle, but my mother said, "I don't think so, Pajtob." The world became green again, and finally we all went outside. Tai planted the green onions. I picked flowers from the lilac bushes for my brothers to smell. They opened their mouths and tried to eat them. My mother said, "Don't let them eat the flowers, Pajtob." We took the babies outside again the next day after lunch, and Bob's garage door opened. We all watched as he pushed out his special bench. He sat down, alone. I pulled my mother's sleeve until she looked at me, and I whispered an idea in her ear. My mother and I crossed the street and walked over to Bob. I let the sidewalk chalk bucket swing in my hands. I asked my mother to ask Bob if I could draw in his driveway. I said, if he doesn't like it, the rain will come and wash it away. Bob nodded and said, "Go ahead." My mother and Bob talked in low voices. I could hear Bob say, "Ruth, she was with me for 60 years. I started my picture with a teardrop, and then I made it splatter like sunshine. I drew lines leading away from the splattering sun in many directions. I drew a line that led to the garden, and there I put a yellow ginkgo leaf. I drew a line that led to the grass, and there I made sparkling snow. I drew a line to the sidewalk, and there I put a smiling worm named Annette. I drew an arrow to our house, and there I added lilac flowers. And then I drew a line, the biggest line of all, toward the street, and I drew the whole world." And when I was done, I walked quietly to my mother and to Bob, and they stopped talking, and Bob shook my hand. "What did you draw for me?" he asked. And I said in a whisper, "A map into the world, just in case you need it." Bob said, "I think I might." Okay, the last book I have for you today is called Sofia Valdez, Future Prez. And you might recognize this because I have read Rosie Revere, Engineer, and Ada Twist, Scientist, I believe, to you. This one's Sofia Valdez, Future Prez. Sofia was a baby who got things done, helping her family before she turned 1. She and Abuelo went out every week to help elderly friends around Blue River Creek who couldn't get out and about on their own with no place to gather, were stuck home alone. Raking the leaves, taking pets for a walk, or dropping by for a treat and a talk, Sofia Valdez did as much as she could for her family and friends in her whole neighborhood. A dreamer, a doer, a real-life go-getter. Most people liked good, but Sofia liked better. Each morning, Abuelo walked Sophie to class. They walked home again along Blue River Pass, making plans, munching cookies, Abuelo and girl, except for that Tuesday when Pup saw the squirrel. With a howl, Pup took off, racing through town, over, under, beneath, and around. Sofia scrambled to try to keep up with the hollering man and the bellowing pup. Up the squirrel ran to the top of the hill, made of leftover junk for the local landfill. When they reached the tip-top of the mountain of trash, which jiggled and broke with an ear-splitting crash, down they all tumbled when hit with a thud on a moldy old pumpkin surrounded by mud. "Ouch!" cried Abuelo. He struggled to stand. "What a dangerous mess," he said, grasping her hand. The next day, Sofia walked to school solo, but it wasn't the same without her abuelo. "This is not right," declared young Sofia, who glared at Mount Trashmore and got an idea. The very next morning at dawn, she planted a sign on the front of her lawn. She stood back and smiled, and Pup gave a bark. "Get rid of Mount Trashmore, let's build a new park." Each of her neighbors had something to say about benches and fountains and places to stay. Meeting spots, gardens, a basket for bees, a rubber duck pond, and a kiosk for cheese. She drew every thought on her map of the park, which was perfectly perfect by 1:45 She drifted to sleep in her cozy, soft bed. Then, bam, she woke up with a thought smacked her head. Her heart skipped a beat as she realized each one of her neighbors had said, "Let me know when it's done." They all thought Sofia could build it alone, but how could one girl do so much on her own? The weight of that thought made her tender heart ache as night thunder growled and she laid wide awake. Then dawn brought a storm to the gloomy sky wept, and the heart-sick Sofia finally slept. Abuelo baked cookies when Sophie got up. He gave her a bagful and sneaked one to Pup. He blinked back a tear as he hugged his Sofia. "For courage," he whispered. "Te amo, mi vida." Sophia's knees wobbled. She felt weak inside. She looked at his ankle and quite nearly cried. She thought, though she didn't feel brave or courageous at all, Sofia Valdez went to face City Hall. The mayor's office sent her to room 401, the Blue River Creek Department of Fun, which sent her downstairs to room 302, the Office of Duck Ponds and Cool Things to Do, to the Office of Monkeys, the Department of Cheese, the Division of Mountains and Meetings and Bees, then down to the basement so musty and cramped where all the town's papers were sorted and stamped. And that's where the clerk said what no one else did: "You can't build a new park, you're only a kid." The words smacked Sofia deep down in her heart. Her plan was kiboshed before it could start. "I think," said Sofia, "that law's wrong." But her second-grade voice didn't sound very strong. The clerk said, "Clearly it cannot be done. Do you have any questions?" Sofia said, "One." "If you were me and I was you, and he was your grandpa, what would you do?" Well, said the clerk, and then said nothing at all. She thought, and then sent out a call to every employee throughout City Hall. The entire government of Blue River Creek crammed into the office to hear Sophie speak. But her words jumbled up and her cheeks turned bright red and a dozen emotions rushed into her head. Her heart beat so loudly she thought it would crack. The crowd leaned in closer. Sofia leaned back. Then her arm brushed the edge of her old cookie sack. And that was the moment that Sofia first knew that being brave, doing the thing you must do, though your heart cracks with fear, though you're just in grade 2. She took a deep breath, looked the mayor in the eye, and thought, though her knees wobbled, she held her head high. Sofia started talking and spelled out her plan, why it all mattered and how it began, and once she got rolling, she had lots to say about meeting spots, monkeys, and places to play. The other ideas for things they could do to help the town elders and other folks too. She had thoughts on the library, thoughts on the zoo, and perhaps a way to combine the two. And "All right," cried the mayor, "go start a petition. If the town wants a new park, we'll form a commission." And so young Sofia got right to work, with some help from her family and Pup and the clerk. The others joined in, not all, but a few, like Miss Lila Greer and the kids in grade 2. There were hearings and surveys and taxes to figure, and then bulldozers and cranes and blue bigger digger. They all built that park, and that's how it got done, with the hard work of, by, and for everyone. But it began with a dream of one person, just one, who laced up her shoes and then led the way to help Blue River Creek get a new place to play. Now every evening till long after dark, the town comes together at Citizens Park. They all hold this truth to be self-evident, that Sofia Valdez could grow up to be president. Until then, Sofia, that real-life go-getter, helps Blue River Creek get better and better. Okay, everyone, have a great week.